Red Bull team principal Christian Horner and advisor Helmut Marko are at odds over Sergio Perez's future in Formula 1. The higher-ups at Milton Keynes have plenty to talk about after the pot has been stirred by comments made recently by both parties. Marko's stance on Perez's 2024 contract situation seems to have shifted after a meeting with Daniel Ricciardo during the summer break. Previously, Marko said that as long as Sergio Perez secures second place behind Max Verstappen, his spot for the next season would be secure. But it appears that Marko has had a change of heart. Now, he's saying that nothing is 100% certain in Formula 1. It just doesn't exist. There are always performance-related situations somewhere that need to be discussed. We'll take a look and discuss how to proceed in Zandvoort. Then we'll know more. It seems that an encounter with Ricciardo over the break triggered Marko's cold feet about keeping Perez on the team. Talking about his meetup with the Australian driver, he said, "We saw each other. That's clear when he comes to Graz. He's had a very positive personality, a successful career, and incredible experience. His momentum and vigor caused a real jolt at AlphaTauri. That was a real boost of motivation." It was revealed that Ricciardo was headed to the hospital for a precautionary examination of his left hand, prompted by a practice crash. The Red Bull advisor started singing praises about Ricciardo, hinting at his fondness for him when he said, "We are very happy with Ricciardo's performance. I hope he didn't hurt his hand. He is at the hospital for an x-ray. So we have Ricciardo, we have Lawson. You always have to have a plan B as well. We want to do next year with Perez as well, but he needs to perform for that. The situation is that Perez has to perform. That means he has to improve his qualifying. Everything is clear for this year. As for next year, we will see." Marko gave a harsh criticism of Perez's performance at the Dutch Grand Prix, raising concerns about the Mexican driver's future with the team. Moments after the race, Marko let his thoughts known, telling the media that Checo's impressive fourth-place finish was nothing more than a stroke of luck. Once again, the Mexican driver fell short of matching his teammate Max Verstappen's exceptional speed, resulting in the Dutchman clinching his 9th consecutive victory. Perez did momentarily lead the race by a big margin after a clever call to switch to intermediate tires before the rest of the field could respond, but he gave his lead up when Verstappen undercut him during the second round of pit stops, and not long after, he lost his second position to Fernando Alonso after a spin-off that led him into the barriers. Perez also had P3 slip through his fingers to Pierre Gasly as the race ended. This was thanks to a 5-second time penalty he received for exceeding the speed limit in the pit lane. Unfortunately, he couldn't create a big enough gap ahead of the Alpine driver. After the race, Helmut Marko voiced his opinion that Perez finished in 4th because luck was on his side, saying, "I mean, he was lucky with his pit stop that gave him the lead, and then when he came into the pits, he crashed quite heavy into the wall. There was a second penalty, and on the extremes, he was too late on the brakes, spun, and then he was lucky, because the car was damaged. The front wing, without the red flag, he wouldn't have finished the race." This year, Perez has faced a lot of pressure, largely due to Verstappen's outstanding displays that have raised expectations for Red Bull. It seems that Perez should be delivering better results, considering the potential of the RB19. While Red Bull has confirmed that Perez will be back with the team for the 2024 season, an extension to his contract beyond that isn't so sure. Marko ended his interview with a hint of pity for Perez's situation. He said, "From us, we have commitment with him. We want to finish second in the championship. We have got that, so he's building up himself. I mean, in fairness, whoever is the teammate of Max has a very hard and difficult life." Helmut Marko might be right about luck being on Perez's side, because Christian Horner has now come to his defense. The team boss and the advisor seem to be on the outs regarding Checo's future at Red Bull. Horner reminded Marko that there is an existing contract for Perez, and it will be upheld. This stance goes against Marko's earlier statement before the Dutch Grand Prix weekend, when he said that nothing is 100% certain in Formula 1. Horner said, "Checo's situation for next year is clear. He's a Red Bull racing driver. We have an agreement with him. Irrelevant of agreements, we're pleased with the job that he's doing. You saw his drive today. He was unlucky with the pit lane speed limiter. He's second in the World Championship. He's the only driver rather than Max to have won Grand Prix this year. It's easy to beat up on him when the barometer is so high on the other side, but he will be our driver in 2024. The team boss holds the view that Perez is handling a job nobody wants, being measured against Verstappen every week. Verstappen, at 25 years old, has been in top form this season with 11 Grand Prix wins, 2 sprint race victories, 8 pole positions, and 6 fastest laps. He has secured a place on the podium in every Grand Prix, including the sprint races. Max is in a period of his career where he's just simply untouchable, and I don't think there's any driver on the grid that will be able to achieve what he's been doing in that car. Being his teammate is probably in some respects the most unenviable job to have, because the barometer is so high. You've got to look at the performance on the timesheet and the results sheet. If Max hadn't been there, Checo would have won another 4 or 5 races. So, he's doing his job. He's second in the World Championship, and hopefully he can add to his wins before the end of the year. At face value, it seems that Helmut Marko has now acknowledged the possibility that Sergio Perez might indeed lose his Formula 1 seat at Red Bull Racing for the 2024 season. This aligns with the general consensus in the paddock, which suggests that Perez's position in that seat for the upcoming year is not entirely set in stone. Despite Christian Horner supporting his driver and citing the 2024 contract as proof to dispel rumors about his future, doubts still persist within the paddock. Red Bull's reputation for replacing drivers even when under contract is widely recognized, and this season has witnessed one instance of this with Nick de Vries. Despite the reassurances offered by Horner and, until recently, Marko, the notion of Perez facing a similar outcome has never appeared out of touch. Prior to his consecutive podium finishes leading up to the break, Perez endured a challenging period marked by 5 consecutive instances of not advancing to Q3 during qualifying. This was the complete opposite of the exceptional form displayed by Max Verstappen, and even the podium finishes carried certain conditions. In Hungary, Perez secured 3rd place after qualifying 9th and being bested by a McLaren, and in Belgium, despite leading over a quarter of the race, he faced a 22-second setback against Verstappen. Given Marko's recent statements, it's clear that Perez's position has now become more compromised. The possibility of potentially replacing him if he doesn't meet Red Bull standards seems to have taken on a life of its own now. Before Spa, it was already known that Daniel Ricciardo's goal was to secure Perez's seat, and his performance in Belgium, where he trailed behind Yuki Tsunoda, didn't likely make Red Bull believe they have a definitive option to replace the Mexican. Whatever the underlying motivation for Marko's statement, it's clear that he does things his way, and that often means expressing his thoughts without putting a filter on them. If this pattern is true this time around, it implies that whether Perez keeps his seat or not, Marko has signaled that he's thinking about making changes. It is highly likely that he's genuinely considering this course of action. But what do you think? Is Helmut Marko just trying to light a fire under Sergio Perez, or is he more keen about firing the Mexican driver? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and ring that notification bell for the hottest F1 news.